We've talked about the Metal Gear franchise in the past, and I wanted to talk about the future of this franchise, if there is a future, and talk about where is Metal Gear Solid 6 at this point, because this is a game that a lot of us have been anticipating for quite some time, and there might be a little glimmer of hope there. So let's talk about it. Guys, the last Metal Gear game we had in the franchise was Metal Gear Survive in 2018, and the last game within the main franchise of Metal Gear was Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain, which was in 2015. Now, here's the thing, guys. This is a game and a franchise, I believe, that has a lot of life left in it, but it needs to be put into the right hands. I think we can all agree that Metal Gear Survive was a significant downturn for the franchise, unfortunately. But in order for us to really see if this is even a possibility, I think we have to look at the creator of this franchise being Hideo Kojima. What is he doing at this very moment? And obviously coming off of Death Stranding, he's now apparently going to be working with Konami on another IP, that being Silent Hill, and he's going to be able to finally finish Silent Hills according to rumors and leaks. Question is, though, the other Konami IP that, of course, Hideo Kojima founded was none other than Metal Gear, and I think it might be a possibility after Silent Hills or maybe after Death Stranding 2, we very well might be able to see a Metal Gear game made in the foreseeable future. And an article that was written by Melindy Hetfeld of Games Radar, if Metal Gear Solid 6 is to happen, even as a remake of 1987's 2D Metal Gear, it needs to build on Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. For 5 years, the prospect of Metal Gear Solid 6 has looked increasingly unlikely, with the Metal Gear Solid franchise put on ice. Hideo Kojima, creator and main driving force behind the series, is now successfully helming the independent development studio Kojima Productions, its first game, Death Stranding, having done well with critics and fans alike. But while Kojima is doing well and potentially eyeing a return to the abandoned Silent Hills project next, any news about his work on the state of things at Konami leads us back to wondering about the future of Kojima's most iconic franchise and the possibility of Metal Gear Solid 6. So, the release date, it still might be a ways off, I think, and that's something that we should all probably understand at this point, guys. If this is a game that's going to come out, it's probably pretty far out. Prior to the release of Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain in September of 2015, publisher Konami announced news of internal restructuring efforts. At that time, the Kojima Productions logo disappeared from the official Konami website, and all promotional material for Metal Gear Solid 5, with Kojima leaving the company not long after the game's release. The only details of this dispute available to the public are an inside report published by GameSpot and a report by Nikkei Asian Review, which notes that according to former employees, Konami barred ex-Metal Gear team members from using their experience with Konami on their CVs. Metal Gear Solid 6, should it come to pass, is likely to be led by Konami, but as things stand, there's currently no info when or even if the company plans to return to the franchise. Look, I believe that Konami, guys, definitely wants to do another Metal Gear, and I think that the way that they're looking at it is that they're open to kind of patching up this relationship with Kojima. Obviously, if this is true, that Kojima is back to work on Silent Hills, one of Konami's, big IPs, obviously, Sony is kind of mending this relationship between Kojima and Konami, and if that is the case, I think Konami will be open to another Metal Gear game. I'm pretty sure, though, they're going to want Kojima kind of helming it once again, because it's going to be steering it back in the right direction. It's going to show goodwill as to, look, we patched up this relationship. Kojima has a massive following, and it's going to help Konami in the long run. The question really comes down to Kojima, and the ball is in his court at this point. If he wants to do Silent Hills, if the experience is good, I think he'll definitely, potentially, return back to Metal Gear after maybe a Death Stranding 2. We're likely never going to find out what Kojima had planned for the Metal Gear series, if indeed he had more plans at all, having repeatedly stated his desire to leave the series. In fact, Kojima stepped aside from Metal Gear Solid 4 only to take the helm when he became dissatisfied with progress on the project. Luckily, Metal Gear Solid 5 is an excellent game which could provide a lot of the groundwork for Metal Gear Solid 6, should a chronological sequel be pursued. These are the suggestions. So, number one, though, guys, really quick before we get into this, is that Kojima obviously was kind of at a point where he just didn't want to work on this series anymore. And I totally understand it, because after you work on something so much and you've made so many games in it, you kind of want to move on to other pastures. And that would be my number one biggest red flag about another Metal Gear game being made by Kojima, is because he's been there, done that. He wants to work on other stuff. Silent Hills he hasn't done, and Death Stranding he wants to continue because this is kind of like a baby to him. So Metal Gear Solid 5's open world setting was certainly one of the most novel changes for the Metal Gear franchise. It's absolutely massive, but the scale isn't a problem in itself. Missions in Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain can feel like busy work, especially since the second half. You have to repeat a lot of what you have already done in order to move ahead with the plot. If you're just out to scrap Photon balloons to stuff and find increasingly creative ways to dispatch your enemies with your massive arsenal, that's fine, but Metal Gear is usually so focused on delivering its story that the type of open world missions you are required to do in MGS5 simply don't really fit the story. So that's kind of like the first part. I agree partially with that. Metal Gear Solid 5's non-ending was much discussed and possibly a victim of mounting tensions during the development of the game. However, there's a compelling argument that MGS5 was meant to feel unfinished, mirroring the game's themes of identity and the phantom pain of unresolvable trauma. Now that we know what happened to Big Boss, or rather the Big Boss of MGS5, his story still remains untold, at least in a game. For all the possible scenarios Metal Gear 6 could explore, there's an opportunity to bridge the gap between the phantom pain and the first Metal Gear, which I think is true. I would love to see that happen. I think there's something about the endings, guys, that definitely, obviously there's a continuation. It's almost like Kojima likes doing that. He likes keeping things open-ended, a lot of psychological mystery to his games. But I would agree that they should continue the story from Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, in my opinion as well. Now, remaking the original Metal Gear, if Konami wants to play it safe and leave the series untouched, as the disconnect of Metal Gear Survive from any Metal Gear plot suggests, it could work with what's already there. Metal Gear, not to be confused with Metal Gear Solid, on PS1 is an amazing game plot-wise and vital to understanding the story of Solid Snake. It's also a game from 1987, a Metal Gear remake using the Fox engine on next-gen consoles will not only be a dream come true for current fans, but also provide new players with a perfect entry point. I agree with this. They definitely should do some remakes of Metal Gear, in my personal opinion. Kind of for people who haven't, because it is a game that's kind of spanned a long period of time here, right? Going way back to when gaming was kind of first starting, essentially. And, so I think it would be good for people, even myself. I mean, I never played those really, really old Metal Gear games. That'd be awesome to have those as a remake. With all the systems that do exist in MGS5, asking for even more seems slightly decadent, but we'd love to see the return of the Outer Ops feature from MGS, Peace Walker, which is the PSP game from 2010. Outer Ops are bonus missions that you can assign to NPCs to acquire resources, and these were missing in MGS5. I agree. I think that would be something that's cool. It's not like I don't have a huge opinion on that, but I would say that would be something that would be pretty cool. This is a big one for me, though, is MGS5 led to 2 online spin-offs, Metal Gear Online and the Forward Operating Base Mode. Metal Gear Online was an interesting game that never gained the attention it might have deserved, especially the Cloak and Dagger mode that fits the essence of the game exactly. The Forward Operating Bases, not so much. Due to a skewed risk-reward system, players will either not bother invading or will be left to their own devices by the base owner, neither resulting in the one-on-one battles FOBs are supposed to facilitate. We think no one would miss the FOB system much. That time would likely be better invested in additional multiplayer maps and classes. So I agree. I would love to see a return of Metal Gear Online. In like a Metal Gear Solid 6. I would like to have Metal Gear Online as like obviously like a part of the package that you would get. And I think that there was something special there. I think that it was something that was almost untapped, or it deserved to be much bigger than it actually was. And that's really my personal opinion on it. But the true sore point is, of course, the story, and the fact that it is, in this aspect, Hideo Kojima is nigh on irreplaceable. Even a Metal Gear remake would have to flesh the plot out to make a game worthy of today's standards, so someone will confidently have to take up the mantle and not try to shy away from Kojima's legacy like Metal Gear Survive did. So, we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens. But here's the thing, guys. I think at this point, this is a game, Metal Gear Solid 6, is in a limbo state at this point. But I don't think, guys, that it's a game that won't ever happen. I think that it definitely could, especially with Kojima and Konami kind of mending this torn relationship and partnership together. I think them bringing that together, bringing it back, and Sony kind of there, that's kind of like overseeing all of this, could be really good for the future of of the franchise. Now, is it something that's going to happen? It's hard to say, guys. I mean, it's really hard to say whether or not this is something that is going to ultimately, if it's something that's going to ultimately come to fruition. However, if it were to, I would love to see Kojima do it one last go around, even though I have my doubts about that. But I think all in all, even if you say that Metal Gear is done at this point, having some remakes I think would be really good. Do those well, and I think that would be something that would be really special that we could all look forward to, even if they left this franchise kind of alone for the rest of time. It's hard to say. I'd love to see Kojima come back to it, but I would understand why he wouldn't want to, because, he's worked on it for so long, and he wants to work on other projects, that being like, of course, Silent Hills, as well as maybe even a continuation of the Death Stranding universe, which is what I think is probably where his mind is at this point. But let me know what you guys think. Where do you guys think Metal Gear Solid 6 is at this point? Do you think it's in a limbo state? Do you think it's something that's already been, that is already in the early stages of development? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And for more Metal Gear Solid 6 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV.